Good evening. Who'll fill you with Christmas cheer for a kiss under the mistletoe, but punch you in the testicles for half a glass of eggnog? It's the ASTVTNP boys. It's Thursday night podcast for American Scouser TV, and as always, it's Trevor and Brian. Brian, how are you tonight?
Doing good, except for this ringing in my ear.
Yeah, it's the ringing of victory and success. I hope, no doubt. And Trevor, how are you? How are both of your holiday seasons so far?
Hanging in there. There, one holiday down, one to go, and then back to normalcy, both in life and with Liverpool, where it's not a game every 12 minutes.
I think it's down to 11 now, just for VAR. They just have to fit more time in for VAR now. So we had no post match for the Burnley game, so that's what we will talk about today. We will look at the Burnley game. We will look at the Arsenalist Spurs that ever scored in Arsenal. Arsenal and Spurs losing today. We'll talk a little bit about their seasons and their potential for collapsing. We'll look forward to the Newcastle game on Monday, and of course the bit of nonsense at the end, because that's what we do, because we are the technologically inept but entertainingly fantastic Thursday night crew. So let's talk about the Burnley game. I caught highlights, the extended highlights. The scoreline, the stats, we dominated on the stats, but the scoreline, the performance I saw, Brian, it just screams functional. Let's get in, let's get the 3 points, and let's get out of there unfazed and unscathed. A professional job, as they would say on the BBC a long time ago. But that's kind of what we want at this point of the season, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's a very controlling game. I mean, we definitely should have been up by at least three to four goals in that first half. I mean, the way we controlled the ball, I mean, the way we bossed Burnley around. I mean, we had a couple of suspect calls. I mean, as normal in every match that we have, it seems like this in this season. But you know, I thought that we played well. I mean, especially given Kwanzaa, a good run out. You know, it had Gomez coming there playing on the left, who actually played a fantastic game on the left. And and then with Lisa Bell and Indo is like turning into like our Japanese superstar in our side. So yeah, I mean, definitely a good controlling game, and walk away with 3 points. That's all you really need. I mean, as far as whether they go in or they don't go in. With 3 points, that's all we need.
Good evening, Alan. And let's try and end the year without mention of the unmentionable. But Trevor, speaking of which, Nunez gets on the score sheet. We blast him a lot sometimes, in a nice, well-meaning way on American Scouser TV. But it's nice to see him on the score sheet. But we want more of it, really, don't we? Because if he could be consistently scoring, he is as dangerous as Salah is for the opposition, isn't he?
And in my head, the bigger thing with that is the fact that him and Gakpo were able to link up for that. Because when Mo's gone, those two are going to have to develop chemistry really quickly to kind of keep the scoring form going. And to see kind of just everything mesh together and then being able to put an end product together is very positive, despite both of them kind of having chances for the rest of the first half that kind of left us wanting more. But hey, over the years, games like Burnley this time of year gave us a lot of trouble, and we either take a bad loss or a really just head-scratching draw. So to get a win and to not only get Nunez back, but Jota coming back, looking good, getting a goal as well, I think is huge going into January.
Brian, you mentioned Kwanzaa earlier, and one of the principles of Kwanzaa, and happy Kwanzaa to all of our viewers and American Scouser TV supporters who celebrate it. But one of them is collective responsibility, and having Jota come back in off an injury, score a goal. Salah is not the feature name of the game. It really does talk about like that whole principle of collective responsibility. It's what we're almost famous for, but coming into the next month with the African Nations Cup and the Asian Cup games, we're going to really need that collective responsibility, aren't we?
Absolutely. I think everybody that we have that we have available all needs to be on the same page going with this. I think Jota coming back healthy and at the right exact time. I mean, it is definitely the biggest win that we have. I mean, Susan McAllister, and I guess that Robbo should be coming back soon. I haven't really looked at the injury update, so I mean, I know there was supposed to be something like that toward the middle of next month that he should be back fit. I mean, if we can go through and make it and go through these next couple of matches right there still unscathed, I mean, I think that we've got a very good chance of making a substantial run in at least 3 competitions right now. But yeah, so I mean, I think that get everybody on the same page. Kwanzaa's dipping in right there in place of Matip. I mean, so I think that we're looking decent.
Trevor, speaking of Kwanzaa, the back four had a clean sheet, which is nice to see because Lord knows I don't think we've had many of them this season. But for a young player like that, a young defender, even though it was Burnley and even though they didn't really push us technically on any level, it must still be nice for his confidence to come out of that game to be starting, to be favoured, and to come out with that with a clean sheet. He looks the part a lot of the time, but we want him to feel the part as well, don't we?
Yeah, and regardless of where clean sheets come with this team, it's just important to get them. And I think that's only going to spur him forward confidence-wise because there's going to be times, and we've seen it in a lot of the games where Kwanzaa started, where he has pockets where his first 20 minutes will be outstanding, and then he'll have a pocket of like 15 minutes where he looks lost. And then towards the end of the game, he'll be back at it. And I don't know how Klopp or the coaching staff is going to figure out how to kind of either minimize or eradicate those 15 minutes of just I don't know what to call it, just the dark period where his brain just shuts off and forgets to mark anybody. Granted, he's kind of got that Kanate in him where if he does make a mistake, there's a lot of speed in him where he can get back and kind of make up for those errors. But like you said, against Burnley, it's not going to bite you in the ass that much. But when we kind of get Newcastle, which we're going to talk about, they have a lot of guys that will punish you more for that middle of the match lapse in judgment.
Brian, just checked out there. We have the best attack right now in terms of goals scored. We also have the best defense. Now, we joke about we don't concede a huge amount of goals. It's just that we seem to inopportunely concede them when we don't want to concede the goals, and often to give ourselves a hill to climb. We've talked about the bounce back ability. Thank you, Ian Dowie, of this team. That they really are a team that will look at an adversity as a challenge to surmount rather than an inevitability. Has the fact that we had conceded the first goal in so many games helped the mentality of this team so that when they do lock it down at the beginning of the games, nobody's going to get past us, and it gives our attack the freedom to go out and do what they do and punish teams when we can.
I think it's gave us a lot of fight back. I think that they realized, hey, I'm up against the wall. That that we have to go through and take control of the match. And I think if you can see early, I mean, it's really not the end of the world situation. I think the problem right there is when you concede in like the 60th, 70th minute, then you're really up against the wall. And I think that we have some kind of issues with handling that. But like these matches where they score like the 5th or the 20th minute right there, and then we have the entire amount of time right there to adjust ourselves to it. And I think that we don't have any issues with that. It's just these late goals that you have to concede that cause problems. I think that looking at how young the side is, I think that is going to be an issue to them right there, to how they can get themselves together. It's a kind of a thing that we had when we had Henderson there. You had an old head, that actually thought through the game right there and took control and got all the players back and hey, calm back down. Let's go with their reset. Let's get it over. Let's get over the hump. I think if we had Endo a little bit longer, I think that we could have had that same type of player right there. But I think that Endo is just being so new into the side, doesn't have as much of a say as you would want him to. And sometimes I think that Verge should be that player to have that say, but sometimes he doesn't have that say, if you understand what I'm saying about that. I think that you look for the captain status that you would want, that Henderson had. Some days I don't see that out of Verge. I see a lot of panic sometimes out of Verge, where he's settling a lot better now. But so like the beginning of the season, you didn't see that Verge was taking control of that back line, and I think that you see like how Kanate would always make these foolish runs. I mean, almost at one point though, it looked like Matip was more in charge of that back line than Verge was. But in the end, right there, it's just, being able to gather the troops together and say, "Hey, let's go ahead and let's do this. That we're a better side. Move them forward." But I think that we are. I think that we definitely have the opportunity, if it's an early goal against us, to score and get back on track right there than we do with the late.
Trevor, in terms of the knock-on effect of that result, obviously we're top of the league, and we'll talk about Arsenal next up. City are a bit behind, but they can catch up, but we'll still have a 2-point gap if they win their game in hand. We don't want to say that we are the pacemakers for this league title. I still think we could probably just say City will go on some ridiculous run at some point after Christmas, after the new year. But where do we have to get to? In what point in the league, what month, what game do we have to get to where we can say it's up to them to take it away from us?
Unlike Arsenal last year, I think if we're in the latter stages of the season and we have 6 points, I think a 6-point cushion is where we collectively will feel not necessarily safe, but we're on the lifeboat at least with a 6-point thing. We know the City run's coming. Haaland is going to get healthy, and he's going to have one of those runs where he scores 10 goals in 4 games. It's going to happen because it's happened wherever he's been. The thing with last year that the anomaly is he never got hurt. Whereas everywhere he's been, he has these just massive goal runs, but he also spends a month on the sidelines, and he does that probably twice a season. He broke all those records last year because that time never happened. It's happening right now, so I think we have to take advantage of the fact that they're not at full strength, and the unflushable turd Everton cannot do us any favors, even when they go 1-up and there's just raucous emotion and then the wheels fall off. We got to kind of just take care of our own business and try to build at least a bit of a buffer while the Rodrigues are gone, while KDB's still on the sidelines, while Haaland's hurt, and get enough of a gap so when City goes on their eventual 12 games where they give up 2 goals and score 35, and we slip up and draw Sheffield United or something like that. Because those results are going to happen, and I think they may happen more than we're comfortable with in January, especially because we looked at the groups for both Japan and Egypt in their respective things. They're not getting knocked out in the group stages. As much as we want that to happen, Egypt is not going to lose 5-0 to Mozambique and just slink off meekly into the netherworld of the AFCON. We need to kind of just build slowly and keep and just maintain, because that city run will come, and it will not be pretty for us if we have just 2 or 3 point lead.
Let's hope that while Salah is away with Egypt, that city run is Pharaoh way. Yeah, it's getting bad. It's getting bad, boys. We need a new joke book for December 31st. But having said that, we talking about gaps and talking about rivals that are maybe pretenders to the throne. Arsenal lost to West Ham at home today, shockingly, where as Brighton beat Spurs 4-2, but really Brighton kind of took their foot off the pedal near the end to let those two go in. They really were sloppy for that last 15 minutes. Let's talk about Spurs first, just because they were the next Leicester. If we believed any of the press, the English media especially, at the beginning of the season, and then those first 6 or 7 games, Big Ange was going to bring the title to Spurs finally, and they were going to be a force to be reckoned with, Brian. But as I said many times from watching Celtic in the last 2 years under Big Ange, they have a problem in the same way that AVB had a problem wherever he went, which was the tactics are always the same, regardless of what the game state is, regardless of what the points are that are needed. Big Ange will play the exact same way, and if you can figure that out, you've got a chance. Are Spurs busted flush now at this point?
Yep, they're gone. I don't see them. I think there will be a struggle to even be in the top 4. I mean, maybe even top 6. I just don't see them coming there and holding on. I mean, and really, honestly, I say this, but if Ten Hag is able to get his side straight, they're going to go past Spurs. I think that, I think they have more talent with them. I think that especially with their kids, I think that they're a better side. I have to eat my words. I said it with the podcast for the beginning part of the season though there. I thought that the Spurs were not going to miss Kane. They miss Kane. They miss him a lot. I mean, I think there's some of these goals right there that they could convert, that they could have scored. They would have scored with Kane in there. I think that there's a little bit light on the top, and I think that it's showing. And they just can't do anything. As far as Arsenal go, I mean, I thought that Declan Rice coming into Arsenal was going to solidify their midfield.
His official name is Declan Rice. Just got it right.
Yeah, I thought it was going to solidify their midfield. It really hasn't. I mean, there's still so many holes in there. And I thought that even Trossard, I thought was actually going to help them out. He doesn't really help them out. I think there's something like some kind of weakness right there that goes that happens there. So I think that we have definitely they have problems and all that. And again, Saka is not Salah. I don't care what anybody says right there. I've heard this whole debate with some Arsenal people right there, how Saka is so much better than Salah. Not even close. I mean, potential's there, yes, but not going to happen. Not yet. But yeah, I mean, I think Arsenal's a solid side. I don't think they're a top 2. I think that's going to be City and us in the end. I think that we have some crucial times to think about. I mean, the beginning part of March, we have them and Everton within 2 weeks. I mean, those are a lot of deciding matches to go with. As far as January goes, we have Bournemouth and Fulham. I mean, and I don't really see so many problems with that. I mean, after a Newcastle match, but then you start getting to a little bit of thickness right there with having Chelsea after that, and depending on which Chelsea side you come across. I mean, because they have their own problems. But like Trevor said right there, if we get a 6-point gap at a good state, I would feel a little more comfortable. But right now, I don't feel comfortable with that lead at the moment.
Trevor, it was a shock for Arsenal to lose to West Ham. I think we mentioned before we went on there, David Moyes gets a lot of stick, mostly from me, to be fair. But he's doing a great job there at West Ham this season. We expected him to be sacked, I think, at the end of last season. He won his European trophy. Thanks very much, David. The league wasn't so hot, but he's only 4 points off the top four right now, and who knows what's going to happen with Spurs and with United and with Brighton, etc., and Aston Villa. For Arsenal, those are the games they have to win to be serious title contenders, aren't they? Or at least not lose them if they can't win them.
Yeah, and I think that's something that Arteta, you thought he would have kind of figured it out last year with the way they approached the end of the season. A lot of games where they could probably have just went and scored and then kind of shut it down when they had the entirety of their defense and goalkeeper healthy, and they kept trying to just run track meets and would either lose or just be up late and then capitulate. I don't understand how Arteta goes about things. It's just another one of these managers that has, it's like, I have my way, and this is what got us here, and this is what's going to get us out of here. There's no situational awareness. And today, just from the little bit I saw of it, once that one call went against them, they completely just fell apart. They were just, the entire time, every single little ticky-tack thing. And you're going, all right, your mind's gone. So when they gave up the second, I had no, when we were talking about how you don't want to be that jinx where, oh, there's the game's going well, I don't want to watch it, because if I do and I'm happy about it, then the soccer gods are just going to take that joy away from me. But I was listening to it and just going, there's no point where I feel that this is going to turn on its head, because every time they seemingly would have something resembling a competent attack, they'd get it in a good spot and then like pass it backwards, and then just lather, rinse, repeat for like the last 20 minutes. And then they're just sitting there all bummed out. If you don't give yourselves an opportunity, then you can't get pissed off when you don't score. And that's something that Arsenal, I think, until they get a true number 9 for whatever that's worth in their system, because Gabby Jesus said that we've talked about this many times, that's a guy that's not going to get you 20 goals with the way Arsenal sets up. Until they get a guy that can do that for them and kind of get them out of jail, like Kane got Spurs out of jail so many times, I don't think we can ever really take them as true contenders.
Brian, West Ham could have had a third goal. Like, they missed the penalty there near the end, I think, wasn't it? Arsenal. Yeah, Arsenal. Well, Alan says Arsenal and Torres for losing points in January and February. Trevor is correct that they did lose their heads after that decision went against them, but more than that, they became petulant and they were trying to dive every which way they can to get a penalty. They were niggly. They were basically like 15-year-olds playing against the senior team. Contrast that with our boys, who just seem to let, we've put ourselves in trouble a few times this season, but we just kept going. Is that the value of having those senior players like Virgil and Salah on the team who've done it, bought the T-shirt and probably gave the T-shirts to some fan to sell on eBay for $27 and half a Mars bar? But nonetheless, we have those experienced heads that can say to the young kids that we have, look, calm it down, we're going to be okay here. Whereas Arsenal are probably, if Declan Rice is your senior player, he hasn't won anything, and if he has, he probably turned around and gave it back 10 minutes later, the traitor swine. But is that what the difference is between Arsenal and us? Is that Arsenal just don't have that mentality, they don't have the experience to pass that mentality on?
Oh, I really think so. I mean, and again, you have a very young squad. I mean, that doesn't that's not skilled at that. But even the same point right there, with people like having Ben White on there, and I mean, it doesn't also help right there their goalkeeper kind of crisis thing they're having right now between with having Raya in there. I mean, which I think a lot that he's not the better of the two keepers. I'm not really sure how Lego Head came up with that concept, but I definitely think that without having older heads in there, I mean, it changes the way your your mentality. I mean, of how you're doing. You would think they would have went out for a little bit more experience in this past window to add to that. I mean, they still have a very young midfield. I mean, and it's a very young midfield that gives up. I mean, that's why I like it. Even having a player like shitty ass Bruno Fernandez on your side right there, you do have that little bit of a person in there that can actually think through processes. Odegaard, as good as he is, can't think through processes. I mean, I think sometimes he overthinks through processes. I mean, and wasn't giving the ball away, or are having problems with it. And like you said, Declan Rice, and for you right there, doesn't win anything. He doesn't. I mean, he doesn't control the midfield like you would want a number six to do. I mean, and so you have those problems. I mean, honestly, they didn't control the midfield against us. I mean, I think that they were lucky to walk away with a point on the Anfield. I mean, and really, honestly, if Onana's penalty was upheld right there, then Odegaard's penalty should have been, and that should have been a penalty on Odegaard. I mean, so they're lucky. We should be further ahead of them right now. I mean, in this title race. So I mean, again, Arsenal is not top two, maybe top three or four. I mean, but I don't see them. I don't see them outlasting us, our city, in this title race.
Trevor, is it possible and poetically just if it happens that Unai Emery will have Aston Villa above Arsenal by the end of the season? Because he seems to have that team. They may not have the technical abilities of Arsenal player for player, but they just look so mature sometimes when they play, don't they? They look like they know what they're supposed to do in every eventuality.
Yeah, Villa is a team that I think has a lot of guys that have gone through some shit. There's a ton of people on there that are longtime championship people that went through that grueling thing and are making the best of their opportunities now on the big stage. They have a lot of selfless players, I'll say that, especially in defense, because their defense is just it doesn't matter who or what. They always seem to have at least one guy with a concussion or one guy with a knee injury at all times. It's almost as if it's like a staff quota, or like, okay, we just had one guy come out of concussion protocol. All right, you're getting hit in the head this week. Make sure it's a good one. But they have a lot of guys that are willing to kind of throw themselves at the ball defensively. They got a guy in Ollie Watkins that can get goals. I don't think he's quite to that stage where we'll put them like the Harry Kane striker level of a guy that can just save you by himself. I think he's just a step down from that, but he's at least being put in good positions to score and score consistently. I think in the end they're not going to have enough, because I don't know if ownership is going to give them enough reinforcements in January for when they are in the next stage of Europe and trying to really break into the top four. If they do get that money, I'm going to be more worried about Aston Villa than I am Newcastle or Spurs or even Brighton, because Brighton is a team that is just so up and down. And Arsenal, yeah, if they can, and I don't want to do it because I think if I actually do the spit take, I'm actually going to spit on my ground. So we'll just call him Declamort or something like that. if he can kind of assert himself as the guy that when everybody's putting their heads down, if like Saka's looking like fucking Charlie Brown that had the football taken away from him for the 700th time, if he can just get up in his face and go, yo, no, fucking stop that, maybe, just maybe at that point, they will kind of get their brains rewired. But if that moment never comes, I think they're just going to keep sliding down, because that's, you do what you know, it seems, as professional athletes. And that's both as tactically and just mentally. And Arsenal, what they know is bottling. And do what you know.
And Declan Rice certainly does that, because he's very good at turning his back on his teammates. Traitorous swine. So Brian, in terms of Arsenal, Mikel Arteta, they had that documentary thing. He was hailed as some sort of revolutionary coach because some of the things that they showed in that Amazon Prime show were, unusual things for coaches to do. There was the comparisons with Pep Guardiola, etc., etc. Look, it's very clear he has to play good football in general. That's not out of that's not out of line with anything. He's a very good field coach, as they would say. But in terms of managing players, in terms of managing their mentality, is he a few years away and a few battles and lost battles like Klopp has gone through with Dortmund and Mainz before he came to us? A few battles lost before he gets it. And before, he has that battle hardened, you know what, today we're not going to play pretty football. This is one of those games where we're going to just have to lump it long and see what comes out of it, as opposed to the tiki-taka idealist he seems to be right now.
I think so. I think that I don't think that this is going to be his last job. I think that eventually right there, as Trevor said right there, something's going to happen at that side. They're going to keep on progressing down. I mean, and they're not going to, and players are going to leave. Their heads are going to turn. I'm really surprised that Saka's head hasn't been turned yet already. I mean, I know that he's had offers on there that he said. I know City's talked about him. We've talked to him and stuff like that. And it'll eventually that side's going to slip. And I think that having tiki-taka, in my opinion, right there, is dead. I think that Pep himself has even changed tiki-taka from what it was. I mean, he's the one that invented and pretty much perfected it and invented it. But But City doesn't play tiki-taka anymore. I mean, if you watch them right there, they're a very mixed bag with how they play. Arsenal still plays it. I mean, I think that people know how to defend that. I mean, it happened to Barcelona. I mean, all these sides right there saw, oh, this is what they're going to do. They're going to play with Messi, tiki-taka. Guess what? I'm just going to show the ball down your fucking face. And then you're not tiki-taka anything. And that's what's going to happen there. And I think that Arteta's going to have to take his knocks. I mean, he's going to have to go through and figure out, how to go there to adjust yourselves to play different styles of football against different styles of football. But, I want to go one little thing right there what Trevor's talking about with Villa. Two players I love at Villa are McGinn and Watkins. I think McGinn will fucking run through a wall for you right there. And he's the type of player that I wanted at Liverpool a couple of seasons ago. I know that we were linked with him and all that. But, I mean, he's a give it all. I mean, imagine him and McAllister together. I think it'd be a fantastic midfield, but yeah, I think that Arteta's a few years off.
Now, speaking about taking the knocks and being a few years off and having a fantastic reputation, we play Newcastle on Monday. It's a Monday New Year's Day game, so let's hope the boys aren't out on the drink the night before. As Bob Paisley famously once said after Liverpool lost the game in the 70s, the next time you want to have a seasonal party, have it in bloody October. But we play Newcastle. It's going to be one of those things where I, for one, Trevor, would not like to call the game at all. It's Newcastle have flattered to deceive a lot this season. They've had some very choice results against them, but they're still dangerous, aren't they?
And my big thing with Newcastle is they have a lot of guys that will try to wind us up. And we have many a player who is wind-upable. And I really just, and like I said, you don't want to like put it as, oh, they're professionals and it's New Year's Day, whatever. There's going to be players on this team that are going to go do festive things. I'm not saying they're going out and getting fucked up all night, but they're going to be there, and there's going to be not, I think, the clearest of heads going into this game. And you're going to have the people like Anthony Gordon who are going to try to turn every touch into a best actor opportunity as he does 7 front flips to the ground. And Sparky brings up Trippier, and he's doing terrible, but he's also a guy that just needs one perfectly placed corner to really get his act back together. And he has plenty of tall people to aim at, and we kind of suck at dealing with set pieces. So it's something where I don't want to be the fulcrum point for Newcastle having kind of a shit season, and then they get 3 free kick / corner goals against us and completely flip their script. I kind of want to just nullify those opportunities, and I think this should be kind of like one of those drab games where you kind of just want to not necessarily slow it down to a snail's pace, but you want to just keep yourself like to the point where you're not giving yourself many chances to make mistakes, because you don't want to give them the opportunities to capitalize on even the most minute of things.
Brian, Newcastle Liverpool games are rarely, or rather quite often, hugely entertaining, high scoring games. But as fun as those are, you would take a drab, horrible, boring 1-0 off Darwin Núñez's ponytail or Jota's testicular hair to win this game, rather than any sort of exciting 4-3 or 5-4 kind of result, wouldn't you?
Castle things that have happened over the past couple of seasons. I'm good. Let's just go and this, 2-0. I'm happy with it. But on with Newcastle, I took a lot of stick about talking about Newcastle, about Eddie Howe. I'm not. I think that Eddie Howe, in my opinion, is probably he was the next coming of the English managers at one point. That he was like, the spotlights are on him. He was going to do all this stuff like that. To my opinion, I've said it right there many times. I think he's an overrated manager. I really not a fan. Same thing with Pochettino. They're both on that same list for me right there of managers that have so much hype surrounding them that really just don't perform. Eddie Howe right there is, he was supposed to be the next Arsenal manager at one point. He's supposed to be this person at one point. This Newcastle side, they have a lot of injuries and stuff like that, but they've been pushed over. They get pushed over almost like every week. They're getting pushed over. The side that you expected right there with the amount of money that they had that was supposedly brought in from this trust fund and stuff like that, they're not that strong of a side. And their tactics aren't that great. That I just don't rate them, and I think that Newcastle, in my opinion, is a top half side. They're like a top maybe like 7 side. They're not in the top 4 in my opinion. I think that for them to get to that point, I don't think that Eddie Howe's the person that's gonna take them that way.
I'm not entirely sure, but the Burnley game was the last one we have Salah for, correct? Or does he get Newcastle before he goes? He has Newcastle, so
yeah, he has Newcastle.
So what way, Trevor, to start with you, and then we'll go to Brian, what way would you see the lineup going then? Obviously, we're going to play Salah, and I'm assuming we're going to play Endo in the number 6. But there's a dilemma up front between Gakpo, Jota, and Núñez and Diaz. How do you solve that particular dilemma, and what do you do with the back, Trevor?
Up front, I think we're gonna kind of have the same deal. Whereas I don't know how we kind of break Diaz out of his funk. I don't know if we can trust him as a substitute guy yet, because he hasn't shown that dynamism that you kind of need off the bench, which is why I kind of want to keep Jota there in that spot just in case things go wrong. He is that break glass guy that can come in and just make a difference. And I'm not sure if he wants to like run Gakpo out there one more time, whether he does some weird hybrid thing where he puts Gakpo behind Darwin. Maybe I don't know if he's willing to put that forward while McAllister's still out. I'm just kind of like shooting in the dark there, but yeah, it's definitely going to be Mo and Luis Diaz on either wing. I personally think against Newcastle, you got to leave. I think you got to leave Darwin on the bench, because if they see him coming in again, they're going to get PTSD, and it could get ugly from that point. So I would personally start Gakpo just to kind of leave Eddie Howe shitting his britches on the sidelines the entire time of when everything's going to fall apart for
him. Brian, in terms of the midfield, would you keep it with Endo, Curtis Jones, and Szoboszlai, or would you change that up somewhere?
I'd keep it like that, because when I saw Gravenberch this past match, it kind of left me a little bit uninspired. I mean, yeah, he did that set for the one goal that was disallowed, but I really think that leaving those three right there would be unchanged. In the front lineup, what we were talking about right there, I would go there and put Nunez out on wide left, and have Gakpo, and then have Salah on the right hand side. I think that running Nunez at them is going to scare the living shit right out of him right there on that wing, and I think that he does tend to drift inside, and I think that's going to make him shit even more. I mean, so I think that we have having that front three, and I think that Endo right now, and the way his form is, as handling stopping the flow, I think we got definitely a winning combination with that.
In terms of the we have a responsibility to Endo and Salah to an extent. Part of the deal for any international player when they come to a club is that they also want to play for their international teams, except for Declan Rice, traitor swine. But do we have a responsibility to Japan and Egypt to not run those two into the ground for one last game, or should we literally maximize every ounce and drop of sweat and blood they have, Trevor, before they go away?
I think it's all situational of how the game is going. Even if he's going off to an international tournament, I think you're going to have to take Mo off the field kicking and screaming if the game is level or somehow we're losing. And I think Endo is a guy that the only reason you take him off is if you need to go get a goal or we're up like 3 or 4-0. So I don't think those choices are going to be kind of left more to fate than anything. You can't really plan for how we're going to be able to kind of work them out of the lineup. But I think to keep just kind of good relationships with these FAs and stuff. So when there are these nothing friendlies, you don't want to kind of be like, hey, can we not send him for this one so he doesn't have to fly to Kenya and then come back in 14 hours and then go play in the rain. But if you can kind of just like maintain those relationships, it's going to be easier to tell these teams no every once in a while. So just sending them not damaged goods, I think, is a way to just keep everybody happy.
So before we go on to the last madness for tonight, Brian and Trevor, we'll start with Brian. What is your score prediction for the Monday game?
I think it's going to be much different from what we saw earlier this season. I see us coming out 3-0 winners.
Trevor, what do you think?
I'm going to run back the same scoreline. I'm going to say 2-1, but it's going to be a much different circumstance. No red card. I know there was a bit of time there that I enjoyed predicting who would get the red card. I was never right, but I'm going to be right in this instance that there will not be one. But I just think Newcastle is kind of due for one of those fluky set piece goals that may not take them to victory here, but it could kind of set them in their wheels in motion to kind of build off that going forward. And I think they will get at least 2 or 3 new players in January, and hopefully we won't have to deal with them anymore, and then they can go have their run of fun on their own time.
I'm going to sort of piggyback off Sparky Parky's 4-0 and say 4-1, because I think you're right. I think Newcastle are due a fluky goal. But I'm going to say a Núñez hat-trick, because the Newcastle defence will think they're playing with or against Andy Carroll, and they won't know what to do with themselves. Salah will get the 4th goal. So that's the prediction. So before we go, we always have the Macka's moral minute dilemma thingy. It's quite an easy one this week. We start with Brian, and then we got to Trevor. Which would you rather have? Jordan Pickford's arms, but you have an itchy nose for all of eternity, or Phil Jones' face, but you have to look in a mirror for the rest of your life?
I deal with nose problems half my life anyway. But I don't think I could. But watch it being Phil Jones and look at yourself for eternity. Oh my God, how much torture would that be? I think I'd rather have Pickford's arms than have and having an eternal itch on my nose at all times. Because I could go find like a wall to go rub up and down. You can't go there and make Phil Jones' face any prettier.
Trevor, what say you?
Yeah, I hate looking in the mirror. I loathe being in pictures. So Phil Jones is immediately out of the way. And like as Brian said, you could kind of just be like that bear in the woods. You can kind of just, you're going to get some weird looks from people when you're in the middle of a CVS, just leaning up against one of the shelves, trying to just itch your nose. But hey, it's better than looking like you're constantly the guy from the painting The Scream and having to walk around with a mirror forever. I think that's a fate that I would not bestow upon anybody except setting you up for Declan Rice.
And he's not even worth a joke, Trevor. He's not even worth a punchline in a joke, the traitor swine. I would pick Jordan Pickford's arms because, there might be a time in life when I'm single again and, the nights get lonely and I don't want to go to hell or have hairy hands. So that might come in useful at some point. Although, to be fair, if you are looking at Phil Jones' face for the rest of your life, you don't really have any motivation to do anything sexy at all, really, do you? So with that said, on that controversial note, it just remains to say that, number one, the Fantasy Football Show is on after us. If you're interested in that with Gally, make sure you're sticking around for that. We also have our socials. Make sure you're following us on YouTube, liking and subscribing. Smash the like button, as Bickler says, or tap it gently as we do, because we are the elder statesmen. Facebook and Instagram and X as well. We have our morning coffee show tomorrow morning, I believe. Sponsored by Reckless Coffee. Get on that.
Reckless Friday.
Reckless Friday. If you can't wake up in the mornings like I can't, and you have to get up at 5 o'clock after falling asleep at 5 minutes past 5. And then we will be back next week, obviously, for Thursday for more technological shenanigans. And the Monday crew will be here. I think for the Monday one, they'll discuss the post-match, I believe, for the Newcastle game. Let's hope we're all celebrating a Núñez hat-trick where all 3 goals go in off the woodwork for once and maybe off the goalkeeper. Or he looks behind him and it hits the back of his ass.
Off his pigtails. off the woodwork.
Yeah, we don't care, to be fair, as long as they go in. As long as he mishits them and they go in. So just remains to say Happy New Year to everybody if we don't see you before then. And we will be back next week for more nonsense and stuff and putting the world to rights. And no plant, just for Alan's benefit. No plan for 2024. So, Brian, great to see you again. Trevor, great to see you again. And everybody else, stick around for the Fantasy Football Show. If you're into fantasy football, just remains to say peace out. And here comes the 70s porn.